So I blended both the new Valentino Born Roma, the Gold Uomo, quite recently, and I did a first impressions of it. And I guess one way to sort of summarize how I felt about this quite recently is that I felt it smelled good, but also that it sort of lacked some personality. And another thing is that I quite quickly thought of Born in Roma Intense when I smelled the Gold Uomo. So I want it a bit more, and it has slightly changed with a bit of usage. And I wanted to compare the Gold Uomo with Born in Roma Intense to share my thoughts on any sort of similarities and differences, and also which I think is the best. Before I begin, a like on this video is highly appreciated, thank you, and make sure you subscribe. So let's start with the Gold Uomo. Some of the notes in Valentino the Gold Uomo are solar notes, spicy notes, nutmeg, Virginia cedar, amber and vanilla. It has a spicy opening with vanilla, and there's something else to it as well, which I think is that sort of a solar thingy. Now I received quite a few questions on that sort of a solar note and what it smells like. And to me, solar notes smells a bit different depending on fragrance. Sometimes it's a bit sort of a coconutty and vanillic. Sometimes it's sort of a vanillic with a bit of citrusy or aquatic freshness. And sometimes there's a floral touch to it. But it almost always have, at least to some degree, like a sun lotion-ish vibe to it. That part in the Gold Uomo has changed at least a little bit with a bit of usage, and now compared to that very initial spray, it feels slightly sort of a richer and fuller, or at least a bit more sort of noticeable. And one way to sort of describe that part in the Gold Uomo is that it has a slightly fresh vibe to it, with a bit of a sort of a warmth to it, and a sort of a suntan lotion-ish vibe to it. The more I used it, the more I feel that that part of it has become a bit more sort of a noticeable, without sort of a fully going into something that is suntan lotion-ish. So the opening is, in a nutshell, a bit spicy with something slightly fresh and sun lotion-ish to it, and vanilla. The more it heads into the mids, the more intense the vanilla, and the more I feel it sort of moves away from that solar note thingy and into something that is instead more ambery. As it dries down, you get a soft woodiness together with that vanillic and ambery combo. So in a nutshell, the dry down is primarily ambery and vanillic with soft woodiness to it. The solar aspect of it is, at this point, at least to me, quite soft, which I think is unfortunate, because that aspect of the Gold Uomo is my favorite part of it. So moving on to Born in Roma Intense. Some of the notes in Valentino Uomo Born in Roma Intense are vanilla and ginger, lavender and nutmeg and vetiver. Born in Roma Intense opens up with a bit of spicy freshness from ginger together with vanilla and lavender. The combo of that super smooth vanilla, the almost sort of a fizzy freshness from the ginger, and the aromatic brightness and shine from the lavender is, to me, fantastic. So a bit fresh in a spicy way, a very smooth kind of vanilla that's slightly sweet, and the aromatic brightness and shine from lavender. The more it dries down, the softer the ginger, and the more intense the vanilla and its sweetness. I don't consider Born in Roma Intense to be a super sweet scent though. That sweetness is almost like a bubblegumish kind of sweetness, and the whole thing is slightly spicy, slightly ambery and slightly warm. The full dry down is basically all about vanilla and lavender that's a bit ambery, slightly smoky and slightly earthy with the vetiver in the background. Vanillic and a bit sweet with lavender. So let's go through some of the similarities. The main one being the vanilla. It almost feels like they took Born in Roma Intense, removed the lavender and instead added the amber, and added a different kind of spiciness to it, and also added that whole solar thingy. They are definitely not the same, and I do feel that it's the opening through to sort of the mids where the main similarity is the most prominent. Then they go in different ways. The Gold Uomo is basically an amber and spicy vanilla with that solar thing in the opening, and it dries down with the woodiness from cedar in the background. Born in Roma Intense puts focus on vanilla and lavender with a different spiciness in the opening and with a slightly sweeter kind of dry down. Comparing them side by side, I do feel that Born in Roma Intense has a slightly sort of a lighter and more versatile kind of feel to it. The Gold Uomo is definitely not a heavy kind of fragrance. However, I do feel that the lavender in Born in Roma Intense gives it a sort of a kind of freshness and lightness that I'm not getting in the Gold Uomo, whereas the woodiness in the Gold Uomo gives it a bit more depth. Again, none of these two are deep or heavy scents. One quite noticeable difference, to me at least, is that Born in Roma Intense retains the sort of a core of it, i.e. that vanilla and lavender, for longer than the Gold Uomo. The opening of the Gold Uomo is actually a gorgeous one, but unfortunately what comes through in the opening gets quite soft in the mids and dry down. Whereas the vanilla lavender combo in the Born in Roma Intense stays for longer. So what I think is fantastic about Born in Roma Intense stays for longer than what I really like about the Gold Uomo. The Gold Uomo is for someone who absolutely loves vanilla and amber scents. Born in Roma Intense is for someone who loves the scent of vanilla and lavender. Both are absolutely no-goes for someone who doesn't enjoy the scent of vanilla. So I did receive a compliment for the Gold Uomo on my first day of wearing it, and this is definitely a very likable kind of scent. And the same thing goes for Born in Roma Intense. I do think Born in Roma Intense is slightly more mass appealing though, but both are very likable scents. Comparing the performance of both, I'm getting slightly, not by much, but slightly better performance out of Born in Roma Intense. None of these are beast mode, but Born in Roma Intense stays longer on my skin for sure. And when it comes to the projection, there's something about the vanilla lavender combo in Born in Roma Intense that does make it pop a bit more off my skin. But here's the thing, when it comes to sort of a skin chemistry, you might experience something completely different. When it comes to usage, I know some of you feel you can't use Born in Roma Intense throughout the year, but I do think you can. It's basically vanilla and lavender, and I don't think it's too deep or too heavy. So I do think Born in Roma Intense can be used throughout the year. The Gold Uomo is also a scent I feel can be used throughout the year. So I basically think both of them are sort of the same when it comes to usage. So when it comes to price, fairly similar, with both being usually like retail around 130 bucks. However, Born in Roma Intense can often be found on sales for just above 100. So which of these two is my favorite? So I do like the Gold Uomo, and it does smell good, but I still feel that my favorite part of the Gold Uomo is not part of the dry down, which basically means that my favorite part of it is something I can enjoy less. The dry down is good, however I don't feel the dry down is great. And it's also where I feel it sort of lacks a bit of personality. I fell in love with Born in Roma Intense and the combo of vanilla and lavender, and when I spray it on, I get that duo quite early on, and it does stay for quite long. So what I truly enjoy about Born in Roma Intense, I can enjoy for longer, whereas with the Gold Uomo, my favorite part of it is something I can enjoy really not that much. So to me, Born in Roma Intense is the best. I like the Gold Uomo, but it doesn't blow me away. And Valentino, if you're watching this video, and if you're thinking about doing a flanker to this flanker, please amp up that sort of a solar thingy. Make it last longer and make the dry down more exciting. More brightness, more shine, a bit more freshness, and also a bit more sort of a sweetness to it. So I would absolutely love to hear from you. Which of these two do you think is the best and why?